The truth you thought you knew about America's first serial killer may just be the beginning of a much darker story. H. Holmes, born Herman Webster Mudgett, wasn't just a man driven by dark ambition. He was a calculated mastermind who built an entire building with one purpose: murder. His twisted tale began long before he arrived in Chicago. Holmes was born in 1861 in Gilmanton, New Hampshire. From an early age, he displayed an unusual fascination with death. It's said that as a boy he would capture and dissect small animals, an early sign of what would become a lifelong obsession with the human body and what it could endure. By his early 20s, Holmes was studying medicine at the University of Michigan. There he honed his knowledge of anatomy and discovered a way to profit from his dark interests. Holmes would steal cadavers from the university, disfigure them, and then claim life insurance policies he'd taken out on fictitious people. This scheme was just the beginning of Holmes's criminal career. In 1886, Holmes arrived in Chicago, drawn to the booming city's opportunities and anonymity. He changed his name from Mudgett to Holmes, a name he felt conveyed sophistication and trustworthiness. But behind that charming persona lay a man who saw people as nothing more than pawns in his deadly games. Holmes purchased a plot of land in the Englewood neighborhood and began construction on a 3-story building he would later call his hotel. To everyone else, it looked like an ordinary business venture, a place to welcome travelers during the 1893 World's Fair, but Holmes had something much darker in mind. The building was designed with trapdoors, soundproof rooms, and dead-end hallways. Holmes personally oversaw every detail, ensuring that his so-called castle was nothing short of a labyrinth. Workers would build sections and then mysteriously be fired, keeping any one person from understanding the full layout. This hotel was more than a place to stay. It was a twisted maze where victims would be lured, trapped, and murdered. Holmes added airtight rooms with gas pipes that he could control remotely, allowing him to asphyxiate guests at will. No one could imagine that the man who welcomed travelers with a charming smile was also designing rooms from which no one would escape. Holmes knew how to use his charm to win trust. He was polite, intelligent, and incredibly persuasive. Guests saw a respectable hotel owner, a doctor, and a businessman, but behind that facade, Holmes viewed everyone as a means to an end, his end. The timing of Holmes's murder castle was no coincidence. During the 1893 World's Fair, millions of people flocked to Chicago, many of them alone, looking for places to stay. It was the perfect opportunity for Holmes. Travelers checked into his hotel, unaware they would never leave. Holmes's victims were often women who came to Chicago seeking work or adventure. He would lure them in, sometimes posing as a potential employer or promising romance. Once they entered his hotel, they became prisoners in his carefully crafted maze. Holmes's hotel was outfitted with chutes leading directly to the basement, where he had a hidden laboratory. After asphyxiating his victims, Holmes would drop their bodies through these chutes to a place no guest would ever see, a basement outfitted with acid vats, quicklime pits, and a dissecting table. This basement was Holmes's playground. Here, he conducted experiments, dissected bodies, and even sold skeletons to medical schools. The true number of lives lost in his castle remains unknown, but Holmes profited off each victim, turning his lust for death into a business. Holmes continued his crimes until 1894, when suspicions around his insurance scams finally caught up with him. After being arrested for fraud, investigators entered the hotel and uncovered the grim reality of what had happened within those walls. The police were horrified. They found evidence of torture rooms, medical instruments, and skeletal remains scattered throughout the basement. The building itself was a testament to Holmes's twisted mind, a structure designed not for comfort, but for capture and death. Even in court, Holmes displayed no remorse. He confessed to 27 murders, but many believe his true body count was much higher. Some estimate he may have killed as many as 200 people. Holmes himself chillingly stated, "I was born with the devil in me." In May 1896, Holmes was hanged for his crimes, but even in death, he remained enigmatic. He requested to be buried in cement, fearing that his body would be stolen and dissected, just as he had done to so many others. Holmes' request was fulfilled, and he was buried beneath layers of cement. To this day, his story leaves a haunting legacy, one that highlights the depths of human depravity and the power of manipulation. After Holmes' death, the murder castle mysteriously burned down. Some say it was an attempt to erase his dark legacy, but stories of his crimes continue to haunt the city of Chicago, forever linking it to the man known as America's first serial killer. Holmes wasn't just a serial killer. He was a man who used his brilliance for darkness, creating an entire structure dedicated to horror. His story reminds us that sometimes true evil can hide in plain sight.